Hello, everybody. Welcome to extra special emergency spicy episode release on the Wall Street Reddit Wall Street Bets fiasco that's been going on. Something that's been very interesting to me. Very much ties into lots of the stuff we've been talking about on the podcast these past couple of months. In some ways that are probably pretty obvious to you guys, and then some ways in this episode we probably get into things that maybe you didn't connect, but are all, I promise you, very connected. And it's something that has been exciting for me, scary for me. Very interesting, and we really get into all of it here, and then kind of all of what happened, and then all of kind of the ramifications and what it points to and what it could mean. And at the end of this episode, you'll see, we neither of us really know what's coming or where this thing is going, but there's so many interesting facets to this story, and it's something that, when it popped up, when I started this podcast, I was kind of thinking like, oh, it's going to be exciting when big events happen in the world and just be able to hop on with somebody and talk about it really quick and get it released. And this is kind of my first stab at that. So I'm really excited about it. I had tons of fun. I could barely contain myself all day because I knew me and Saad were going to hop on here and record this. And if anybody listens to this and hasn't listened to the first episode with Saad, it's one of the most viewed ones on YouTube. Since I'm getting this out so quickly and it's kind of rough, I doubt it'll be up on YouTube very soon. But if you go to YouTube, the last episode, if you go to VonDubCast.ca, it'll redirect you right to my YouTube page, or just search the VonDubCast. What am I talking about? Search the VonDubCast and you'll get there too. Also, I'm not running this one by anybody to pre-listen to when I upload it, which is kind of scary to me. But it's kind of one of those things, if I want to get it out, I got to do this. So apologies if there's any audio issues, if I forgot to cut out any farts or burps or pee breaks, I don't know. But yeah, this one's a little bit more fly with the seat of the fans. Fucking right, I can't talk today. Who cares? You guys are getting this. This is all raw today. So yeah, it was fun. I had a good time. I'm not going to make this a really long intro. I don't need to tell you guys all about it. I got regular episode will come out on Monday. But this one's kind of a little, extra special one for you guys. I think you need to know a little bit of knowledge and hopefully you get something out of it. It's probably more or less what you heard on social media, but just in a longer form, and maybe just get a little bit more personality in the mix, a little bit less people in suits talking about it, and a little more couple of idiots that, are taking our swings at it. And I think that's what everybody loves, is a little bit more down home talking about these types of things. So we'll get right into it. Like I say every time, if you can follow the social medias for the VonDubCast, that'd be awesome. If you can tell a friend, pass this on, share it. It all really helps. I'm having so much fun with this. The feedback is amazing. Reach out to me. If you go on the VonDubCast Facebook page, comment on it. Not everybody's, unless somebody's joined to it, they're not going to see it. And I'll respond to everything. I'll converse. If you hear something on any of these episodes you want to talk about, go in there and comment on that. And, we can start a conversation there. It's kind of a place that, comments are always so negative on the internet, but I think we can make it positive if we start here, and we know that it's not going to be a place for hate and just people to exchange ideas. I think it's gonna be pretty powerful. So come talk to me on there, and or DM me, whatever you want to do. Just I'm loving the feedback on here. This is the funnest part, but it kind of feels like it goes out into a void sometimes. So the more people get back to me and let me know how it's going and what I can improve and what I can do better, the better this can be for you guys. So without further ado, let's rock and roll, baby. All right. Well, thanks for coming back on, Saad. You're one of the biggest hits of the podcast so far. Lots of good content came out of that one. I think a lot of lessons were learned, and had to put up the bat signal when something like this happens to get you on and help bring some more of that knowledge to the people. And you oblige with not even a wink.
Always, man. Anytime. I'm always, you and me talking. I always enjoy that, so we'll take that anytime.
Yeah, we always had a good time, whatever the subject was, and it's not often a big juicy subject like this just drops into a lap for us to pick apart. But as we were saying, kind of before we got going, just before we dive into all of the Wall Street bets and GameStop stuff that you guys are all here to hear about, we just want to do a little disclaimer that neither me or Saad are, inside traders. We don't do this for a living. This is, something that was very interesting to both of us in probably different ways as we get into it. But don't take anything we say for gospel. It could be extremely wrong, especially if it's coming from me. So just be careful.
Exactly. A lot of it is, stuff that we're still learning about.
Exactly.
A lot of it was stuff that, all of us, no one really, there's no rule book right now. What's going on?
Oh, I think I lost you for a sec here.
So perspective on it. How's it right now?
You're back, baby.
Good. Sorry about that. I think that's my internet.
Hey, that's podcasting in COVID, baby. That's how she goes. I'm sure people are used to it. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Fair enough. Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, there's just no playbook to it, and maybe just to dive into it. Maybe where did you first hear about this? Because I was, it kind of dripped and drabbed into my life until I fully understood what it was, and then I had to kind of dive into, Twitter is where I heard about all of it first, kind of thing. Because I'm not a big Reddit guy. Every once in a while for certain things, but I just never got sucked into it. Was that where you saw it on Reddit, or were you?
Yeah, so I saw it on Reddit first as well.
Yeah.
I was always on wallstreetbets, but never really took it that seriously per se. Kind of just like call it a lurker per se, nothing more than that. Now, obviously, one kind of call it the whole COVID lockdown that happened with everyone working from home or whatnot is it really gave a lot of amateur traders time to learn about financial investments and stuff like that, especially with the fact that now you can do all of that from quite literally the push of just a touchscreen on your phone.
Yeah.
So those two combinations kind of really got me very interested in different financial markets. And obviously, naturally, when you're a millennial investor trying to be Wolf of Wall Street or some shit like that, you always have a group chat with the boys on stocks.
You got it. You got it.
You got to have it. You got to have it. 100%. And now everyone there is following wallstreetbets as well. So that's kind of where the whole wallstreetbets phenomenon started from. But there was a friend of ours on that group chat that was part of this group for like about a year or two ago as well.
Right.
So he got a lot of valuable information from there because there are a lot of smart people on that forum. As Chamath, the CEO of Social Capital, talked about, and he's like, there are a lot of smart people on Reddit actually take the time out to listen to their perspectives. And so I've always just been a bit of a lurker on Reddit, nothing where I've contributed significantly or anything like that, but it's just the way this has blown up. I think what's been really, really fascinating to me and kind of where I started to get into this, when GME started to go to about $60 to $70 a share, because the biggest believer that I'm in is the exponential growth of the internet, especially in a COVID world. Especially in a COVID world, people have time in their hands. This is juicy gossip. It's kind of like a viral TikTok.
Right.
And just yesterday's events just blew up that viral TikTok completely.
The Streisand effect was in full effect there.
Exactly.
And for those of you that don't know, the Streisand effect is when I can't remember how it came up. I think it was something came out about Barbara Streisand that she didn't like, and she tried to get it shut down. And the act of her trying to quiet it down just kicked up such a ruckus, because people are always curious, what are you trying to keep away from us? And it just blows it up, right? So as soon as they started to
you can't kill people's curiosity.
Exactly. It just breeds more. And maybe I should have started with a brief overview of actually what this happened, because that's probably what people are here for first, is what is going on? What is the actual cause and effect of what we're seeing and what everyone's talking about? So maybe we'll start there, and then we'll back up to how we got into it, because then I'll tell kind of my half of where I started. Right. So maybe just I don't know, we'll probably pass it back and forth, because I do understand it a little bit, probably not as much as you, about the actual effect and what the stock was. So it started with games.
About the effect. What's happening?
Right.
What's
exactly.
happening? Okay.
Yeah. What's happening? Tell me what's happening, Saad.
Long story short, what's happening is that there's a process, and I'm going to dumb this down in a very, very easy way to understand. Okay, there's a lot more intricacies involved when you know financial markets, but the most important phenomenon that people have to be aware of is what the process of shorting a stock is. So the first thing we got to understand is the process of shorting a stock. What is shorting a stock? And its fundamental way, shorting a stock really is betting off the fact that the stock value of a particular company is going to decline. And the more it declines, the more money you make. Right. So what that process looks like is, say, for example, you are a lender, Nick, that you have, say, for example, 10 stocks of GME. And say I'm a hedge fund. So how shorting works is I'm going to borrow those 10 stocks from you right now, today, on January 29th, 2021.
And you get that cash value.
If I decide to sell it.
Right.
If I decide to sell it.
Okay. If you decide to sell it?
Yes, I believe if I decide to sell it.
Okay.
So, gotcha. But yes, that's the whole process. I believe you can get the cash value in some case. This is where the intricacies come in, right?
Yes.
You can get the cash value. You can choose to get the cash value, or you can sell it yourself. Whatever way you want to go about it.
Right.
At the time of the market you want to sell it at. But here's what happens. You're selling it immediately. But what you're doing is you then have to give those 10 stocks back to the original lender. So if I've gotten those 10 stocks and sold them at the current market value, before our contract expires, say we have a contract of 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from now puts us at 13th or 12th of February.
Right.
Okay. Before the 12th of February, anytime before, I have to return those stocks back to you, those 10 stocks. Now, if the current market price is $20 and I sold them, made $200 off of them, and say after 2 weeks, that stock drops down to $3, I'm going to rebuy it at $3 mark. So 3 times 10, $30. So my buy price is 30. I made money of $200 by selling it when I borrowed it from you. So my net profit is 170.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's if my bet paid off. Problem is, if the stock prices increase, then that's a decision I have to make of, do I think this increase is only going to be temporary, or do I think this increase is going to continuously grow?
Right. So
say, for example, the stock price is increasing $1 per day after I sold it at $10. Okay. After I sold those 20 shares at $10, if the stock price has increased $1 per day, when the stock price hits 15, I'm going to be like, you know what? Maybe I'll just have to cut my losses, buy back all those 20 stocks at $15, and eat that loss. Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly what happened here. But a bunch of Wall Street bets got really popular in Reddit is that they identified a couple of hedge funds that have publicized their shorts.
Right.
And this is a very common practice. Here's the thing. Wall Street trades based on psychology at times.
Yes.
Fundamentals are there, but a lot of the manipulation is really psychological. So if you, for example, look at us amateur investors, when we see, oh shit, Berkshire Hathaway has purchased all this stuff, we look at the success they've generated, and they're like, these guys must know what they're talking about, so I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit.
Exactly. So a lot of Wall Street operates that way.
Yeah.
And by publicizing, especially
shorts,
especially companies that have been successful, they're shorts.
Right.
They're kind of putting the seed in the mind of investors that
that's
don't put money
stock.
Here.
Exactly.
That's a bad stock.
And they can drive it down.
They can drive it down, and it really fulfills their agenda. The funniest part is Reddit just was like a big FU to them.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to consistently increase it. We're going to buy heaps and heaps of it. And we're going to continuously drive the prices up.
Right.
Of this stock. Because ultimately, if they don't close their positions, their losses can be infinite as high as it goes, because they still have to give those back. And the funny part is of this entire process is the average shorting, I believe the short interest for this stock is still sitting at about 120 to 130%. So the higher the stock value goes, the more people short it, and the more Reddit doubles down, or amateur investors double down.
It's a bit of a game of chicken, right? So they're shorting it even more, because if a stock's at $10 and you short it expecting it's going to go down, you have there's a small window of money you can make. But now that it's bumped up to $300 now, if you think it's going down to $5, that was your bet at the start, you think it's a bad company, like GameStop's going out, eventually it's going to come down there. So they keep doubling down, and Reddit keeps saying fuck you and dumping more money in. And
exactly.
So then there's something
it's a really funny situation if you ask me.
It is. And sorry. Another piece of this that I hadn't really considered, I had thought, it was just that game of chicken, that there was these hedge funds that had these short positions, saw what Reddit was doing, but instead of just saying, shit, they got us, let's close out, let's take our losses, right? Whatever it is, they're going to hold and hold, hoping either that, there's some sort of SEC stepping in and, putting something in place that prevents this, like we kind of saw bits and pieces of. I'm sure we'll get to that at a certain point here, or that the people, all these Reddit guys that are throwing in their money, eventually they're going to want to cash out. They're going to come out. This is all going to kind of fade away. The stock will return to normal, and then our initial bet on the company, right, which you can take it or leave it, whether you think they're actually betting on that company to do poorly or they're trying to short it so much to force it to do poorly, right? Like we talked about signaling to the market. But what somebody had brought up to me was that as everybody's jumping in the market, there's not any shares to buy back, right? All these people are jumping in on Reddit and buying up all these shares. So as long as they hold, there's no shares for them to buy back, which holds them in that short position. And now that infinite, as it grows, not only if they do get to that point where they say, hey, this doesn't look good for us, I'd like to just cut my losses here, take my huge losses on these, billions of dollars, but they can't even do that, which is the part that makes me laugh, because that's the real squeeze. If that's what happened when they did this in reverse in 2008, where everybody got into a crisis and they said, oh no, everything's fine, you guys can't do this, but then we'll just get bailed out at the end, right? And and it's so funny to see.
That's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. And the unfortunate aspect is the more I understand the situation from both the brokers such as Robinhood and the hedge firm, the more I understand it from their perspective as well. The funnier it gets. Well, the loss on the hedge fund side, like I said, I think it's a very fair way to lose money. You know the fact that your losses can be infinite, and you chose to publicize that. I think unfortunately Robinhood just got caught up in a no-win situation. No-win situation.
Yeah, and Robinhood, just for people that know, is a investing app that you can do. You can invest small amounts. You aren't actually buying on the market. So this is something that I've been trying to wrap my head around. I've heard a couple conflicting things on this, and maybe but when you're investing with Robinhood, it's actually not Robinhood doing the investing. What you're doing is when you type in, you hit that button on the app, just a microsecond before that, they get that information of what you want to buy, and they send it to one of these big
the Citadels. Yep.
Yeah, Citadel or whatever.
The ones that process their orders.
Right, and they process the orders for them, right? And they get paid on that. So then, isn't it true that like people like Citadel has short positions and stuff, and also has a stake in this game in what we're doing? So they were taking.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So there are two scenarios to consider here from Robinhood's perspective.
Right.
Scenario one is that every time you put money towards an option, you have to have margin, which is the collateral that you put on the side to make sure you're good for it. Exactly.
Right.
The problem was on the retail side, there were so many options being exercised, but not enough margin. And the influx of buys, basically, if all these investors all these retail investors, if they lose all of that money and are unable to pay back Robinhood takes those losses.
That makes
that's a big kind of challenge on Robinhood, because Robinhood's taking the risk.
Right.
Robinhood's taking the risk when all these retail investors buy on margin without the collateral. So that's something I did learn afterwards. Now that being said, they handled it very, very poorly. I've been very vocal about it.
Yeah.
The reason they handled it very poorly, and this is where things don't smell right, is if you need time, and this was a liquidity issue. This was straight up a liquidity issue at the start. This was a liquidity issue that, okay, these guys are putting $10 billion into these stocks, and if this thing tanks, I'm going to be on hook for it. Okay, totally fair. But you can't suspend just buying.
Right. And
have to suspend selling as well.
Right.
And you can't just target one group of investors while allowing institutional investors to continue buying and selling as they want. Because here's the thing, right, Nick? The price of anything, any equity, any product, it all depends on supply and demand.
Right.
When Robinhood and all these other trading apps specifically prevented buying, they created an oversupply of sellers in the market.
Right.
Like there was no one to buy. The only buyers were the hedge funds, were the institutional investors. And so the stock was worth, say, $400, and there were about 1,000 people selling it for 400, but there was only 100 buyers. Well, they're like, okay, we're going to buy it 200, and then whoever folded gave them that stock for $200.
Right.
So that's why the price tanked, which we saw for both BlackBerry, AMC, and GME.
Right.
Now, what the SEC does in these kinds of cases is the SEC halts trading completely. No one can buy, no one can sell, take a breather, walk it off, come back.
Mm-hmm.
Or if Robinhood in this particular scenario, really if liquidity was the issue, what they should have done is no buying, no selling, stop.
Right. We need more time with this. But
we need more time. Exactly.
I'm still kind of struggling to see where Robinhood's on the hook here, because so now the way most of these apps work, and maybe this is me being mistaken because I've never used Robinhood, but I've used similar apps to it. I had to, before I could do any trading, I had to put money into that account. It left my bank account. It was with them. I no longer had that money, right? So now all these people that are buying, that money's gone to Robinhood, I would assume. So now,
so I'm not 100% sure how Robinhood operates. So are you familiar with Questrade, for example?
Yeah.
So Questrade allows you to invest money you haven't put up already.
Oh, okay. Then I'm not familiar with Questrade. I was thinking a different
exactly. And so I think
the one I know.
Yeah, Wealthsimple doesn't allow you to do that.
Oh.
So what Questrade? So if I put $5,000 into Questrade will give me, say, $12,000 to invest. And if I blow that $7,000,
that's on them.
I have to pay that back to Questrade.
Oh.
But that's the problem. I think Robinhood operates in a very similar way. I could be wrong. I have to check that. But from what I understood, at least, is that Robinhood operates in a very simple way. So all these guys were buying stocks with not their technical money.
Oh,
and if they couldn't, if they couldn't pay back Robinhood because GME tanked, then Robinhood would be on the hook for it.
Right. So that's the reason they were saying they pulled that move. But if that was the move, say, hey, let's stop. But what they did was say, oh, you can sell yours off because if you sell.
Exactly. That's where it gets shady. That's what I don't agree with at all. And that's why I'm like prison. 100%.
I would say that's where it starts to get shady. I think it got shady.
That's where it gets shady.
Yeah.
That's where it gets really.
I wanted, that's kind of why I wanted to start with just getting the facts of what happened, because I think what's way more interesting to me is the reasoning behind all of it and then the reactions. I feel like that is what I've watched because I've been on the outside. Like I told you, I support this, and I think I love watching these hedge fund fuckers finally get what's coming to them and get through this game.
I agree.
And like everything that coming out, all the reasons of like why, and like, hey, you guys do this stuff too, you have no leg to stand on. It's like, oh, if you only knew. You just listened to one thing. Like, yeah, there's some fuckery going on with shorts. But you want to talk about like just Wall Street in general, and buying and selling, and sending signals to the markets to make money. This is what they do. They make money off nothing for years, and it's what pays for all this stuff. I mean, I think actually on our conversation on the podcast we talked about that kind of cognitive dissonance that's happened in society of, our GDP is growing, and that is what happens, right? These guys make money and they collect all this wealth, so it looks like, hey, everything's growing, everyone's better, but the average me and you, Joe, does, man, our quality of life hasn't changed much, right? Like
No, that's why one thing that I've talked about previously, which is not related to this particular event, is that I do not inherently believe gross domestic product is a strong reflection or a strong KPI necessarily of how your general public is doing.
Right. Key performance indicator for anybody that is.
Exactly. Key performance indicators. I don't think GDP is one. It shouldn't be the sole key performance indicator.
It needs to be tied to a couple other things to give you an accurate assessment. And I think it's very And I think there's a lot of people that know that, but choose to remain ignorant of the fact, or to present it as if it is, because that serves their means.
Correct.
And it prevents people from seeing, what's getting over on them, because they think, hey, everything's going good, the economy's going great. Like you watch throughout this pandemic of just all this, business collapsing all the time, and which is funny because pretty much the pillar of every argument against what's going on right now, right? And every hedge fund billionaire that comes on CNN and is crying about this and everything, the basis. I love it. I know, me too. It's like I could eat that stuff up all day. It's
there's a friend of mine that messaged me earlier. He's like, we're gonna I think he's like, we're gonna salt our Wagyu steaks with their tears.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel. But in digging deeper into it, into looking at what their arguments are, what they're trying to protect, because they honestly have no leg to stand on. Everything they argue that this does, they've done in spades in a million different ways. But every argument seems to come down to, they're saying this is not real because the stock market is very important. It is what tells us. We don't do anything in the stock market. We don't manipulate it. It just tells us. We're just playing this game. It's almost this autonomous being. We don't have any control over it. But doing something like this where it doesn't accurately reflect what it is, takes away everything we depend on, and we have so many structures built upon this, right? So the basis of it is that the stock market is too important to be manipulated, and the importance hinges on its realness, right? That the stock market accurately reflects these vectors of the economy, but that is such bullshit. The stock market hasn't reflected exactly what the stock market was supposed to since the day it fucking began. People have been fucking with it and trying to manipulate it to make money. That is what the stock market is. That's how they have jobs. If they couldn't do that, nobody could make money. That's fundamentally how the stock. But when it works in their favor, they argue that no, it's this golden standard. You can't do anything, right? Which is completely untrue. But when it doesn't fit them, they're like, no, this is just how the game is played, right? In 2008, that was just how the game is played. In 2021. This is unheard of. This is unconstitutional. We can't have this, right? Everyone's just clutching their pearls, and it's absolute bullshit if you have even an inkling of the idea of how the stuff really works. And it's so funny to me. That is what makes this amazing to me, is to watch them try and clutch at these absolutely asinine, arguments. It's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is. And I think, the thing that got me really, really riled up is, if there's one thing a lot of people know about me, I'm a very strong proponent of a free market, with very, very careful regulation to ensure competition exists.
Right.
Okay. I'm a proponent of the free market to incentivize competition. And so basically anything that prevents a cartel or a monopoly from forming. But that being said, and a lot of these people on Wall Street are very similar. They're very strong proponents of a free market, no regulation, whatnot, but only until it affects them.
Yeah.
If it starts affecting them, then no, we need regulations. We need someone to help step in. Every person's like that. Not my backyard.
Yeah.
Exactly. We can talk about that, man. I talk about that to you off this when we talk about pipelines, for example. Everyone loves a hydrocarbon world, as long as it's not in their backyard.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a similar concept. It's cognitive dissonance, which we talked about. It really is cognitive dissonance, and really where I think a lot of people haven't been able to where they've kind of been caught off guard is how quickly things can grow on the internet. And this is quite literally what happened with GameStop. It's quite literally the fundamental of capitalism. Like, you have a group of people who understand another group of people have made themselves economically vulnerable and given up their competitive advantage, and they've taken advantage of that.
Yeah.
That's quite literally what Wall Street's been doing for eons.
Exactly. And that was one of the funny things that I can't remember who said it, but they said, even if you don't understand this at all, this is way over your head. All you need to see is that hedge fund billionaires are asking for regulation. That has never happened. They have never once.
I know. That's amazing. That's honestly, that's exactly it. When you have a situation where AOC, Donald Trump Jr., Ben Shapiro, Elon Musk, and the guy who founded the Fire Festival,
Yeah.
when they're all on the same page of a particular issue,
Mm-hmm.
you know you've messed up tremendously.
Yeah. And it's so funny to me on the even, I mean, this is maybe jumping too many steps ahead, but I think you'll follow where I'm going. But to see so much of what's happened in the last 4 to 8 years, all the hatred, all the things that have been, bandied around have all been blown up in an essence to take eyeballs away from this real issue right here, of that there's people with a lot of money are stealing from you left, right, and center, and people feel it because life doesn't seem to be getting better for me. There seems to be someone else that is stealing from me, and they would just take that anger, take that uncomfortable feeling that everyone feels and knows to be true, and they would target it at these people. Okay, what is your thing, right? This is going to be mask versus anti-mask. That's what you get mad about, right? And they just find all these people to get them fighting over this stuff to distract away from this. And this is the one issue. This is the power. This is everything I've been talking about on this podcast for goddamn fucking 7 months. And it all comes back to this. This is what I'm saying. This is that gut feeling that everyone's against, and they use that and they manipulate that so beautifully. They play it like a harp. And this is that one moment where most of the blinds are pulled back, right? It's everything's bare to be seen. It's just that unfortunately with the stock market, it's done intentionally to be confusing. They don't want you to understand. There's a certain barrier to entry that are designed in. There's very confusing terms. There's purposeful barriers to stop you from being in. Now everything's pulled apart, and the only thing that is stopping people from seeing the truth is their understanding and is the amount. So guys like yourself that have dove in and understand this stuff, it's clear as day, and you're screaming on Instagram on your stories like, "Hey guys, this shit is happening." You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that not everybody has that knowledge, right? Like I told you, I have a business degree. I studied this shit in school. Like I remember learning, shorts and long positions, puts and options and all this stuff. And it's even hard for me. I had to ask you a bunch of questions, like over the last couple of days, I've been kind of throwing stuff at you and, getting your take. And it's amazing that that's how far we've come. And I've been just like a kid in a candy store watching these people.
See, here's one thing that I've learned, and I feel that a lot of people do. You're in sales as well. I'm in sales as well.
Yeah.
What can I draw from my work that I've realized happens? When you have leverage, or when you're useful to another person, that's when you have power over them.
Right.
Okay, that's when you have power over them. The problem is, once you empower them and give them the ability to know what you know, then there's a risk of them overpowering you.
Right.
And that's why I really, all these barriers to entry, lack of accessibility, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, sit down, stay away from this, is really feeding that. So say if you're a fisherman and you're the only fisherman on an island, okay, everyone relies on you for your fish.
Right.
If you're inherently selfish, you're not going to teach another person to fish.
Right.
You won't, because the moment you teach another person how to fish, then you give your leverage away.
Yeah.
This is where I think the question of morality really comes into the market. Is there a lot of people that know a lot of ways to make money, an incredibly large amount of ways, but oftentimes that knowledge is not shared beyond a certain class or threshold per se.
Right.
But I think that's changing. I do think that's changing. I think that's changing incredibly.
The internet.
But the internet, I love it. Exactly. The internet's a great place. Exactly. Like think of, I've seen this in the market. I've seen this where, people will collude behind closed doors and set the market price a certain way.
Look what happened right when COVID hit. All those in the States, all those senators or whoever they were went into a closed door meeting.
Exactly.
All stuff coming.
Exactly.
Made all these financial moves to put themselves so they made hand over fist. Made cash.
Now, if they genuinely cared about the common, common person who's invested, say, 10K, 20K into their investments, if they genuinely cared, wouldn't you think they would have tried to do something about it? But the vast majority, this really comes down, that's why I said it comes down to an issue of morality, is unfortunately what I see, is that a lot of people are very, very selfish when it comes to making money. And that's where I think we've talked about this in the previous podcast, is that if this is for example, this is where shit gets a little bit deeper. If this is all you believe in, if everything here is all you believe in, like these 40 years are it, that's it, and money is the root to all the social success in the world, and you're going to put that above anything else.
That's your religion. That is your core.
That is your religion. That is your core.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when it comes to Wall Street, that is their core. Their core is not, I'm going to take care of people. Their core is, how much money can I make in the shortest period of time possible and not have to worry about who gets trampled in the way.
And it self-selects for those people, just like politics at a certain level self-selects for those people. It may not be money exactly in politics where it is in investing, but it's power, right? And power and money are almost synonymous, but there's times where, you'll give up a certain amount of money for a certain amount of power, right? And that comes in Wall Street too. They do the same thing. But I love what you talked about the internet changing all this, because you see it not only opens the doors to it, but it changes it, right? That model of having money or power being that everything, right? And that not
it empowers people. It empowers people. It gives people that leverage.
And you see people like Joe Rogan who espouse this, a rising tide raises all boats. Everybody needs to help each other. We need to love each other.
Correct.
There's no we're in the 21st century. There's no famine anymore. Like, we can all get along. We can all get a piece. We have enough money in the world that we can bring everybody to a better level. It doesn't mean that it's just everyone's equal. It's not communism, right? Which is everybody's.
Exactly.
But then you see that exact mindset, that almost, like, not to call that a religion, but just that value system pop up in Reddit. That's exactly what the spirit of
and the biggest, exactly. And that's the best example of it. And the biggest call it that I've seen, it comes back to the same discussion. Why would the status quo empower anyone who's not part of it when they are quite literally making a lot of money from not empowering them?
And then
why would they?
And then that money is a huge base of lots of these politicians of where their money comes from. So now, and then the news media, where do they get all their money from? The same two places.
That's where it's an incredibly I don't think it's the right system per se.
No.
That's why I like Canada a little bit more than America. I mean, Canada for sure. Every place, there's no perfect place. There's no such thing as a perfect place. But when I look at America, especially when it comes to, think about money for political campaigns. Quite literally, the success of your political campaign is going to be dependent on how deep your pockets are.
Yeah.
So your politics is based on money.
Yeah.
It's not based on, but the internet's changing that. The internet's really changing that.
But it's also
time, a little bit.
But it's also making it worse in another sense. And I don't know if you thought about this, because of the internet and politics, the way it works, and because of the amount of information that everybody has, right? A certain thing happened when the internet came on board. People didn't realize how much of their data was out there, and they didn't realize what was happening with it. And there became this whole marketplace. Before anybody realized it, there was this giant marketplace for data. They say, if you don't have to pay for a service, you're the service, right? Or whatever that's
exactly. You're the product.
You're the product. Exactly.
If you're not paying for the product service, you are the product.
Exactly. So now there's this huge amount of information about you, about how you think, about, especially when social media came on the game. They have all these acronyms. They have everybody pinned to exactly what makes you tick, what you care about, what will make you angry, what will do all these things. So now if you want to be successful in politics, you need to have a lot of money for a lot of tech companies to give you that information. You need that on your side to be able to manipulate and find what strategy is going to work best, right? Like, when you see those campaign videos on TV, those are 100% coordinated. Every image, every frame, every word, every color is perfectly framed with all that information. And that is expensive. And that kind of pulls people out of, like that one guy that was running in the States a couple of years ago, and he was, seemed like a pretty good candidate. And then he yelled or something, said something kind of crazy, and they just jumped on it, blew it up, spun it, because they knew they could take this one, whatever it was, this sound he made, and he made one sound on a stage, and he was done. He's, not even in politics anymore. I don't know. I don't remember the guy, but it's just what they can do with that. But in seeing this, I've been saying that, it's all the same thing. These huge, corporations, politics, and news media are all the same people. They all pay each other. It's all circular. And then something like this happens where the little guy is finally getting a win. And who all unites to come down on it? These hedge fund guys go on CNN. There's certain politicians, right? And there's the AOCs of the world and the Trumps of the world, unfortunately. The guys that are on the outside, that's the anti-institutionalist guys, right? And it's unfortunate with everything around Trump that it gets demonized with that, and that's what they're trying to paint this whole picture of this. Now this Reddit thing is somehow a Trump thing. Like, what? Where did that come from? Like that's no part of this, but that's their tool. That's every time something that they don't like that's anti-establishment. Okay, paint it with the Trump brush. Now we can demonize all these people, right? Like now you support this movement. Now you're a Trump supporter. Like, what is happening there? But it's so you know what I mean? Like, it's so funny to see how quickly they all rallied the horses and all of them, and they didn't even do it like, okay, the news is going to beat it up this day, then the politicians are going to come out this. They all at the same time, all kind of came out yesterday and today of these guys just, pulling the curtains back themselves and just showing like, hey, yeah, no, we're all behind the same curtain. You don't even need to go to those curtains. We're all behind this one.
The challenge is, one thing that I've seen, I think, the challenge is situations like these that arise that really, really are unprecedented. They're often a combination of several different factors that have compounded to create the perfect storm.
Right.
And I was reading about it. You could argue a component of it was some of the deregulation of Wall Street that Trump had introduced in his bills, which allowed people to short stocks and interests to such a high degree. Where I think there's a committee of the United States White House that monitored the shorting of stocks by certain hedge funds. I think Trump deregulated that, like he completely dismembered. Now, not saying that's his fault. That was one factor. Then you could say people sitting at home in COVID with a democratizing finance system was a second thing. Not a bad factor, a good factor.
Right.
Nonetheless, still a factor. Then you could talk about the fact that a hedge fund so blatantly publicizing the fact that they have shorted this.
Yeah.
Third factor. Now, here's the best part. This whole, I think the one thing that we've got wrong here, this isn't retail investors versus institutional investors. This is retail investors plus quite a few institutional investors versus other institutional investors.
Yeah, for sure. They jump on.
So a lot of hedge funds have actually caught on. And they're also silently pumping the stock up because they stand to gain from it a lot.
Exactly, which is where me being very much unbound, I'm more about the pain and I'm more about the glory of it, right? Like I care about the people banding together to show their power completely legally to use the same tricks that they use to show them the same pain of what they've done. I like that. Now, it gets, and like you said, I loved how you said it's pretty much a morality call at the end of the day, because these individual investors that did nothing wrong, they were playing by the rules. And technically these hedge funds, right, there were certain things that got put in place, regulations got taken away. But essentially what ended up happening was they're not doing anything wrong by shorting all these stocks, right? Technically by the rules, right, there might be some morality about just shorting in general and what that causes.
Exactly.
That you could argue. But technically by the rules, they're not doing anything wrong. So now, as much as I don't trust any of these politicians, any of these corporations like the SEC to make a decision, they're going to have to. And it's going to be on a public stage, which is what I find fascinating. Because now there's a morality call where not like 2008, where it happened too fast. It was too quick for anybody to have a say. It was, again, a morality call, right? And that one was a different morality call where these guys knowingly, they know that, houses never go down. They always go up. Let's just sell everybody a house, whatever, that we know it's going to come crashing down anyway. Anybody that can fog a mirror, you get a house, right? Everybody's got 3 mortgages. They knew this was all going to crumble. So that was immoral, not illegal. Again, not illegal, but immoral, right?
Exactly. So and that's where we have to differentiate that. Just because something is legal does not make it moral.
Doesn't make it moral at all, right? But then all those people down in the States that bought those houses, that wasn't illegal, and that wasn't immoral either. They were misled, right?
Correct.
And you have to, and I'm a big proponent of self-accountability, so you can't take it all off of them. You have to have some sort of a brain to realize, you make $30,000 a year and you'll have 2 mortgages. Like something doesn't add up. You have to have a little bit.
Agreed.
But then it all came to be so quick, and everything was crashing so quickly, and there was nothing to do. And people, and at that time they were shorting, I think even the bank and these huge institutions that were shorting them because they knew what was going to happen. If you watch the movie The Big Short, there was guys that were already pre-positioned to short it, right? But then people, once everything was in free fall, they saw it happening. So the SEC stepped in and cut all shorting for a while during that. I could be wrong on this. Again, I'm an idiot. Don't listen.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't really follow what happened in The Big Short.
So then what happened was they kind of cut all this, and then all these people, right? And this is where that argument goes out the window for me of, the stock market tells us things like we're not actually doing it. So then when they pump trillions and trillions of dollars to reinflate the market and make sure that everything didn't crash and you protected these people, that where was the markets just telling us we don't impact it then, right? And that morality call that they had to make when they do that was between those two people, right? Neither side did anything illegal. These people that sold all these houses and created this problem, right? But that might have been immoral, and the people that bought all these, right? But the person that ended up paying at the end of the day was the people that bought. They lost their livelihood, they lost their business, and that was a morality call that nobody got a say in because it happened too quick and things are in free fall. We didn't know what we were going to do, and that happened. But this one is on a smaller scale, but is almost the identical call in reverse, right? Like now these little lenders, they've done nothing wrong, right? And they've done nothing immoral. The hedge funds that shorted all these stocks to 100%,
nothing wrong.
Technically did nothing unlawful, and it's arguably moral, right? And to me, I'm on the side of the guys that did nothing wrong and are completely playing between the rules, especially because the people that are on the other side of this are fucking scumbags that have played every trick, done everything immoral, illegal, fucking like against everything you could do, they have done, and they will do it, and they continue to do it, and they openly talk about doing it, right?
Let's not even worry about how many violations Ken Griffin and Stephen Cohen have both conducted in the last couple of years.
It's ridiculous, right? It's banks in general. I read. I forgot to post. I had a whole nice post typed up yesterday about Matt Taibbi. He's a journalist that I follow, and I get lots of my news from. I pay $5 to get his Substack, and I get a couple articles a week. And a couple that really stuck out to me in the last couple of months building up to this. One was on Robinhood, specifically on the worries and the things that were coming with it, and just kind of a whole breakdown of what it is and all this. That's what I learned about, how it works, that they're not actually trading it. They go through this other company and stuff. So I knew this all before, just on a whim. And then the other one that we was talking about was the banking system and how much money laundering and drug money and trafficking money goes through them, and all the systems they have in place so that they can go like this and say, I don't see it, but they know it. And they have all these reports, and they don't send them out, and like Deutsche Bank and all the Goldman Sachs, and they just have like here is 400 provable like child trafficking rings that are using this bank. And there's no punishment to it. These are these same people. They're all playing the same game, and they all do separately.
The challenge is your society, the fabric of your society. These are the foundations of the fabric on which your society is built.
Right.
And if you challenge those foundations, you challenge collapsing the whole building.
Exactly. And unfortunately,
that's what makes it so hard.
Right.
That's what makes it so difficult. But that's why that change, the problem is that change. And that's unfortunately, the biggest conundrum of this entire issue is that kind of systemic change occurs step by step. If it occurs too quickly, you do risk collapsing quite literally the fabric that supports every Tom, Dick, and Harry.
Yeah. And let me throw out a metaphor. I'm building it on the fly, so it might not make sense. Let's pretend that America is two giant towers, right? One is the Democratic Tower, one is the Republican Tower, right? Everybody in America lives in these, right? And that's all you can live in. And these buildings, both of them, they steal from you, they charge you $1 million. It's got a Lister meal plan. They charge you out the ass, right? Like you have to do everything. It's just not a good system. And the people that own both buildings are the same people. And they put it in place so that you can't build any buildings, right? So and if you're locked in that, and over a couple of years, there's going to be people that say, hey, we need to take these down. But like you say, people live in them. There's people that have nothing to do, that just are trying to make a living. They have nothing to do. So you can't risk pulling the whole thing down, right? But they're never going to let you, renovate the whole thing. They're in charge, right? And I always thought like, it sucks how I was always, very much depressed about it. I just thought like this is never going to change other than violent revolution. And I'm not a proponent of violence. I hate violence. It's not something I would ever do. I would almost, and I think that's the decision that we've unconsciously been making, is that we're going to stick with this system because we're choosing the other option, which was violence, right? And I'd never seen another opportunity. But then I did in that unity movement. And that's why I was so inspired. I wanted to help. I said like, hey, I'll join, I'll do whatever. I'm in Canada. It's not really my fight to fight. More than what it was. It was an idea. It was a third option. When third option seems like the only third option was violence, it was another one. It was sneaky. It was coming at the right time. It needed the right.
Beating them at their own game.
Beating them at their own game. And it was a groundswell that needed to happen before they could put things in place, because it came out of nowhere. And it got growth and it got traction, but not enough, right? I think their plan was to try and get on Joe Rogan and get it to blow up before. And I think just with scheduling, I mean, Joe, you can't get on his show, right? It's, booked 6 months in advance. I think that was the play in my head. I've never had that confirmed. That's just me guessing. But I just thought like that was that third tower. Like they were showing like, hey, we've got plans. Like we've got a skeleton up. Like, hey, come on over here. Like just trust us. I know it's scary. I know it's scary. We lived our entire from the starting of.
We don't know what the fuck the foundation's made out of, but just come here and live with us, man. We'll figure it out.
Right. But what they had was that same thing we've been talking about this whole thing. And like what I said, it's what I've been trying to talk about this last 7 months on this podcast. It's the power of the internet. That's what was, instead of that greed and that power being that base, it was that whatever this new thing that the internet is, it's weird, it's wacky, it's memes, it's fucking, meme stonks. Like it's
the ability to mobilize ideas in a very rapid way. That is what the internet has empowered people to do. And I'm all for it. I love it. I absolutely, like I told you, right? Remember that empowerment aspect. Say you have 10% of Wall Street that are a bunch of moral investors. Say 10%. Without the internet, how many people are they going to empower? But with the internet, how many people are they going to empower? A very vast amount. And then that's going to eventually have a knock-on effect as well. So the distribution of ideas and knowledge, it's amazing what the internet has. And I think it's probably one of the most important. I would argue that the internet for the growth and especially of a more just civilization is right at par. The internet, justice, electricity, water, heat.
I would say the only thing that has had more impact on the human race other than the internet is fire, in my guess, right? And I'm probably wrong, and there's probably something in there like the wheel that, change it or something else, like, I don't know. There's a bunch of mathematical things that was really game-changing in the world that met him. But even then, like how long's the internet been around? What, 40 years, 30 years? Like, and not in the way that we see
30, 40 years, exactly.
And in what it's, if you want to take less of a ticky-tack way of saying of when it actually started, but when it became what it is now, almost like, I don't know, 15, like 2005, the internet wasn't, fully utilized. People still didn't realize there was a very small group of people that were already ahead of the game, like there always is, that were really going into, but worldwide adoption didn't happen until much later, right? And
exactly.
And to see what kind of leaps and bounds, and that's what happened as soon as the internet came in, the rate of turnover and the rate of change just ramped up so quickly that these institutions that were led by these octogenarians and septuagenarians, it's ridiculous. 70s and 80-year-olds in politics and on the heads of universities and the heads of these boards. It's ridiculous. So now we're in an internet age, and you have people running, the people in the real power positions, right? Not the fake power positions like what they want you to see the power positions as, but the ones that are in there. They aren't on this power of the internet, let's lift everybody up kind of idea. They're still running on that old issue.
Keep power concentrated.
Right. And Eric Weinstein, one of my heroes, someone I listen to all the time and has been on top of all this shit. This is where I got this shit years ago and was trying to say it. And he's so articulate and brilliant. I mean, he's proposed his own theory for everything. I mean, that's fucking pretty wild for anybody to do. Where's it going with that? I got lost in my own admiration. What's he saying about it? Oh, this is what frustrates me about him. He went fucking silent during all this COVID shit. And he went, like, he stopped putting up podcasts. He stopped doing all this stuff. And then he's recently come out and he was saying, like, he saw some of this stuff coming and was trying to, just buy time. And he was saying for like all young guys our age that are out kind of saying things that we're saying and trying to unfold some of this, he's just saying like, no, just hold back, wait. This isn't your time. There's nothing you can do. These institutions are too powerful. They're led by two people that are too old of people that are too encrusted into it. And he said, just wait. In 20 years, all those people that are in those positions that are 8 years old and they're falling, there's going to be a replacement with younger people into these positions. And slowly over time, he said, you're only going to, go out and let them paint you with those brushes of whatever it is on the day, right? Whether it's, you're a Russia apologist or you're a Trump guy or whatever it is, there's a couple tools that they have, and they have like 3 paintbrushes and they just paint you with that. That's all the tools they have, right? But they wield them impeccably, right? And he said, all you're going to do is devalue the work you can do in the future by sticking your neck out too first. He said, let the old guys like me and the Joe Rogans and the Ben Shapiros and the, David Rubins, let us be the first against the wall. Let us, fight this fight. We'll take them out. And then you guys need to be the upswell from underneath, which, I get that. But I stood by and was silent and didn't start a podcast like this to talk about these things for years. And it ate at me and it killed me. And it was just, I was going crazy because I felt like I listen to these podcasts and it's the only time people are speaking sense. And then you go out in the world and turn on the news or whatever it is. And it seems like everyone's playing in this, everyone's LARPing almost, like live action role play. Just you see all this stuff.
But here's the thing about that perspective, right?
Yeah.
No one knows. No one inherently knows what the correct strategy is.
Yeah, you're right.
That's why you have different strategists.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you knew what the right strategy was, why hire a strategist?
No shit. Yeah.
Why hire? No one knows. Everyone's utilizing information from their environment to try to predict that. Now, that perspective I think is understandable, but again, that perspective comes from that individual's limited social awareness of what's around him.
Right.
If someone has different perspectives on necessarily how to go about that, I don't think you can necessarily discredit them. You can say, this is my perspective, this is how I think. We're going to accomplish this particular task. And then those who choose to agree with it can follow along. Those who choose to disagree can be like, I disagree because I believe this, and this. And have at it. Yes, the biggest reason, for example, for the success of what we've seen over the last week has been the ability to concentrate that entire force into one or a few channels.
Yeah.
Problem is, if you chase too many different channels, you dilute your momentum. And so again, that was another factor which we talked about, which was all other compounding factors that contributed to what we saw over the last week. And I love the fact that this just grew kind of like a viral TikTok.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be interesting to see if this becomes the norm, because suddenly so many people have made so much money off of it. That it's like my own cousin made 100 G's off of this thing.
Wow. That's
awesome. I was like, holy crap. I was impressed. And so it's like, are suddenly now retail investors going to deliberately target this? Well, what does it say about future short positions then? Is shorting 100%. Still going to exist?
And that's what I'm saying, right? Like, you don't want them to come in and regulate just to stop the bleeding, right? But then long term, how long do you keep doing it? If it keeps going, like, does you just have to let everything run out until every short position has been, pushed, and then reset from there and put parameters around it of how much, like, there's so much that's up in the air right now, and I think nobody knows, right? And I think there's going to be lots of it. But just what makes me happy is the Streisand effect and how many eyeballs are on it, so that now, not like before where they kept it cloak and dagger and this is just what we have to do in 2008 and this is what happened. Well, people are watching and we know what went into it.
That's the best part. The best part is, it's funny, I was talking to I have a lot of friends on all sides of the political spectrum, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's really funny. So I have a friend, she is such a socialist. I love it. Well, that's her perspective, and that's like great. I was like, good, that's your perspective. Cool. Power to you, whatever. And so one thing that she always talks about is that she's like, I hate how and this is what a lot of people I sometimes who are against the sentiment of capitalism, I hear this sentiment quite often. She's like, I hate how average 40K a year earning fresh grads out of university defend all these billionaires, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. That's their perspective. Well, after last week's events, all those 40K billionaire defenders suddenly turned on them again.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's what's really funny. What's really funny is for the first time, I'm seeing everyone of every political spectrum united, no matter whether you're a capitalist, a socialist, a communist, I don't know, whatever you are, a dictator, I don't know. They're all against what just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's going on.
And to me, that all makes sense, because it's not those 40K a year people that are defending these billionaires. They're not defending the billionaires to themselves. They're defending the ability to become a billionaire, because everybody in their head thinks on some level thinks that I'm going to be a billionaire one day. I'm going to be that person. They all see themselves as that. So if you say that you want to put parameters to stop that from happening altogether, because, you know, me and you, if somebody had $1 billion tomorrow, I very much doubt we would spend it the way that typical billionaires spend it, right? Like, I think we would do.
And a very exactly, as you mentioned, I'm going to go one step further. A really big thing is also, like, you know, my perspective necessarily on what I believe is a fair and ethical system. It's not just about, it's not about my personal gain, but I think, again, this is my perspective. My perspective could be wrong, but it's based on the observation of people and cultures and societies that I have learned. I have seen money incentivize people in ways that I have not seen them be incentivized otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
Morality is a great thing. I know it is. But unfortunately, for the vast majority of very, very intelligent people that I've seen around the world, a lot of them have used their intelligence for good, but the majority have used their intelligence for money.
Right.
Or to get bigger, because money's given them social status in society. And ultimately, as a social animal, you really want social status in society.
Right.
Okay. It supports the basic biology of them. So for me, you know, the economic system that I particularly support is primarily competition, free markets. But the only regulation of free markets that I really do inherently support is that as long as they're stimulating competition.
Right.
Because if they don't stimulate competition, then there's no economic incentive to produce something better or faster, or quicker.
Exactly. That's my piece. Exactly.
Okay.
You nailed it. Right.
And that's my perspective on it. You know, and the best example of this that I give to a lot of people, which country pioneered all these COVID vaccines like that?
Pirated or pioneered?
Sorry?
Do you say pirated or pioneered?
Pioneered.
Okay, two different things there. Pioneered.
These COVID-19 vaccines, where did they all come out from?
U.S. Yeah? I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's it. That's where it came from. U.S. is quite literally the most capitalist society in the world.
Yeah.
Quite literally the most. Okay? And this is what I mean by, and I understand people will disagree with me on this, and that's totally fine. Power to them. That's their perspective. I respect that that's their perspective. This is mine. And that's the thing. It's that a lot of people that support this system are in support of competition and economic incentives for that competition, but not cheating that system to further gain an advantage. And suddenly, hey, this is the one little place where everyone's aligned, no matter what your belief is, that you can't cheat the system that we have in place. And I really like that. I completely support. And I think for a lot of people that were very supportive of the system, they felt cheated. Like, if you look, it was funny. Like I told you, I've never seen Fox News agree with AOC.
Yeah, I know.
I've never seen that. Can you imagine that? Okay. They were talking about the same thing. AOC's talking about what she's right. She's like, people have been cheated. Like, the average person has been cheated. If you really wanted to have a level playing field, every buy, every sell should have been stopped right there, right then. I lost a third of my investments in GME, AMC, BlackBerry as well. I didn't sell. I just lost a third of its value.
but lots of people don't have the balls, and now you get penalized. Not only did you lose, but now you held, and other people didn't have the balls to hold there, so now you lose on top of that too, right?
Exactly, and like I said, that's the problem. Was if just trading was suspended by the SEC, which GME was suspended 15 times in the last 2 days, I think. That's fine because both buying and selling is suspended.
Right. Yeah.
When you suspend only one part, you deliberately tank the market. And I don't know the truth right now, unfortunately, because a lot of people are, it's understandable why people right now would not trust a lot of institutions. It's very understandable because of what they've just seen. They've literally seen people robbing investors in broad daylight.
Yeah.
That's what they've witnessed.
Take it right out of their pockets.
So excuse us if we're not particularly trustworthy of a lot of things that should be deemed trustworthy.
Right.
But I think one thing that I saw yesterday, and I'm going to pull this up actually really quickly. If we look at one thing that I saw, again, this is a theory. I don't know how true this is.
I love theories.
GME's stock price, I think, I wish I could, I'm going back to 5 days. Yeah, GME's stock price, I think, increased really, really rapidly. I think it doubled at a very, very short period of time yesterday in the middle of trading, both GME and AMC. And I have a very strong feeling that might have been a very small short squeeze where some people would have some hedge funds closed their positions by capitalizing on the market tanking from 400 all the way down to, I think, whatever price it came down to 132.
Yeah, so that was a bunch of
it came
closing.
Yes. So that's what I think happened.
Exactly.
From a high of $469, the market tanked to $132 per share. And then trading was resumed.
Right.
And in the middle of trading, what we saw was a very short spike up for about 5 minutes and right back down with a price double. And I think that was a bit of a small short squeeze that we saw right there.
So maybe can I repeat it?
Purchase those stocks
just to make sure I understand it. So what they did was, what's happening is more and more Redditors and then institutions seeing the same thing, jumping on that bandwagon, are going up and up and up and up and up. The stock's going up. Every dollar that stock goes up is billions of dollars of losses on those people with the short positions. It's going up and up and up. All of a sudden, these apps say you can't buy anymore. You can only sell.
But you can sell it. Exactly.
This causes a big dip. And before they and at that same time, everybody is fucking freaking out. That's what you saw on I'm sure everybody listening right now saw the hoopla. What the fuck's going on? This is bullshit, right? Everyone freaked out. But and then they turned it back on. But then when you look at what happened before they turned it back on, there was a big spike, and that was
so after they turned it back on, while it was trading at it reached a price of about $270 around that night. But in the middle of that, it spiked randomly up until about 400 and came back down for like 5 minutes. And again, this is just a hypothesis. I don't know if I'm right or not. This is merely just a hypothesis. And it smells fishy. If I was a hedge fund and I had a lot of investments in Robinhood, and Robinhood took all their operational money from me, I would tell Robinhood to tank the system.
Yeah.
And I would then buy all those stocks that were previously at $469 at a discount of $110 or $140.
Cut your losses.
Cut my losses, and then tell Robinhood to
turn it back.
Resume trading.
And now it doesn't matter. Now you got your.
Now I close my positions. I'm chilling.
Exactly. Now you're unaffected. Yeah. No, I agree, and that was exactly what I saw. As soon as I saw that Robinhood, what they did in these other apps, I mean, Robinhood's the scapegoat because they're the most public, but there's also other apps that were doing the same bullshit. As soon as they did that, I said, oh, this is the time. Everyone's going to panic. Everyone's going to sell. It's going to go down. They're going to say,
that's when they're going to close their positions.
This is going to be the best time we're going to get. It's only going to get worse from here. Let's close out, right? There might be some, unicorn coming in on down the hill in terms of regulation that might save us, but we can't depend on that. This is us saving our own bacon.
And the problem, and on top of that, the losses to them, if they close their position at $469, we can't even begin to imagine what those losses are going to look like. They would rather be fined a couple billion by the SEC.
Yeah, for sure.
Than take those losses.
Exactly.
And this is where I am the proponent of little slaps in the wrist.
Yeah, go to prison, jail.
Prison. Yeah. Go to jail for what you've done.
It's just the same as all these, and it's funny that all these companies have the same playbook. It's funny because now Big Pharma has all these they design these opioids that they know is going to cause an epidemic, and they calculate in the amount that they're going to get sued for, knowing they're going to recoup that anyway, right? It's the same, and nobody goes to jail for it. So what's the plan? Yeah, okay, we made $900 billion and we got fined $300 billion. Okay, $600 or $600 billion win.
That reminds me of a TikTok that I saw, which I think was pretty funny. There was this person on the TikTok who talked about the fact that when you take a $500,000 loan from a bank, you're paying it back in 30 years. If you steal $500,000 loan from a bank, you're only going to jail for 10 years and you're coming out with nothing else to pay.
Exactly.
and this is exactly what we're seeing on a much larger level.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's very hard to watch when you understand it, and to know that the only reason they get away with it is because it's a complex issue and there's not enough people that understand it, and that's all they rely on. But as the internet empowers more people and more people wake up to this and more people do their own research and realize what's going on, their position becomes more and more tenuous. And I truly believe that all of this stuff is just what we're seeing now for the last 10 years is just circling the bowl of all these institutions. I think it's universities. I think it's news.
And what's challenging is the problem is when you're in a system surrounded by a bunch of snakes, it's very, very difficult, unless you've built up your company that isn't reliant on them, it's very difficult to not be a part of the same thing. It's kind of like talking about what we talked about in the last podcast. Show me your 5 best friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I'll give you, Robinhood is a great example of this. If you look at Robinhood's major investors in their company, it's these hedge funds. It's Point72, it's Citadel, it's Melvin Capital. Mm-hmm. So when they lose, Robinhood's operational revenue loses as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now it becomes a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. Here you have all these retail investors coupled with Wall Street that's screwing over my company's investors.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I built a business model which is aiming to empower these people, but the empowerment of these people is taking away money from the people that have allowed me to build my company. Mm-hmm. Who do I empower?
Exactly. The people that are signing your checks.
That's what it's a no-win situation. And so it's funny. There's a really good, there's one guy that I really like. His name's Chamath. I don't know how to pronounce his second name. It's like Palapalifte or something like that. He's the CEO of Social Capital.
Right.
Another hedge fund. But he's a much more moral investor from my perspective, at least. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he was talking about this. He said the reason he didn't invest when Robinhood was gathering funds for their Series A and Series B back in at the start of their whole journey was because he did not think that they had integrity. Mm. He said the business model was great. He said everything about it was great, but he said he didn't see integrity there.
Yeah.
And he did not want to associate or be tied to that in any way, because the moment he's tied to it, it's going to affect his business too.
Right. And that's funny because, like I told you at the start, that Matt Taibbi, I love his stuff, and I read that article on Robinhood, and that's what he's saying. He said, yeah, it's great what this is bringing to the people, but there's some sketchy things going on, like who's at fault, and what he was saying before all this stuff happened, because this wasn't even I thought of at this time, but what he was worried about is what they're doing is making it too easy to invest. It's a complex thing, right? And you want to have everybody to have the ability, but there's no checks and balances. So if this all didn't happen, how they would screw over the little guy is to get them to go in and make it way too easy for them to invest, to get them in over their heads, and then all that money that goes in the end goes back to those hedge funds, right? It's not a good company. They were wearing this suit of armor that, hey, we're for the little guy, but at no point, even without this whole short squeeze scenario that ended up happening, that ended up being their downfall, because they're done as a company. There's no way. The moment they pulled that move where they said you can only you can only
sell. You can't buy.
That was the end of their company, right?
That was the end of their company. I agree.
So then you go, oh well, then if you're willing to give up your entire company to protect these hedge funds, that's who's signing your check, right? You showed your choice in that move, right? And that's, I mean, it's going to sound funny right now, but Dave Portnoy, the head of Barstool, he was on some show saying this out, and he's saying that, right? Like he's obviously not a dumb guy, but not his area of expertise by any means. And he like said it, as soon as you make that move, you know exactly where they stand. And it's just about how many people will understand that and who has the power. And then
I think, correct. Yeah. I think the ultimate question that is on everyone's mind, which I hope we get the answer to, is, and I don't think it was, but I'm coming at this I'm approaching this from a neutral lens and not an emotional one. Was that act, because they had a liquidity issue, right? A liquidity issue. Robinhood had a liquidity issue. Was the act of preventing buying accidental or deliberate?
Yeah.
But I don't think it was accidental. You know that you are like, put yourself in the CEO's position right now. You have your investors that prop up your company, and you have your customers who you outwardly portray you're defending.
Right.
You would have given that thought. You would have given that a lot of thought. You can't say that, especially while this was blowing up, even in the after hours, like this was blowing up all week. So this was a scenario that was coming or could eventually be coming. Okay. This is coming, and to still deliberately make the decision to only halt buying, as I think he's lying on plain TV.
And to me, that to even say that there's even a way it could be accidental is such bullshit. These apps are huge investments. Like to program in, when would you ever need a function where you could only sell and not buy? That's not how stocks work. You shouldn't have that built in. You would have to custom build that.
That's not a free market.
Right? That's not a free market. So if they said like, oh, we accidentally did that, right? Well, why did you even have that built as an option for you to accidentally do? Because there would never be a real world solution where you would need that, right? So to me, that's bullshit. There's no way you do that. And I mean, both me and you, like we're trying to stay neutral and think of it that way. But if
I'm approaching it from a neutral lens, but then I'm also telling you what I think.
Exactly, right. And I'm the same way, right? It could be, there might be some sort of scenario, but when you go past, a couple steps, it immediately kind of falls to pieces. And one thing that we kind of already passed over, I'd like to bring us back to that, was you're talking about your friend that like some of these socialistic tendencies and is looking at these billionaires, and what we talked about is the system, and they want to be able to rise up to that, because to them that's all they know. What you do in life is everybody protects that core value, whatever it is. If that's your religion, that's where you see people, right? When Conor McGregor fights Khabib and he goes after his religion, and it turns into this huge, and people were going, oh, why is this so much bad blood? Everyone understood, right? No, you went after his, right? That makes sense. That's a core being.
It kind of, exactly. When someone comes after your core being, it's really difficult for you to step outside of your core being and evaluate their perspective from a critical lens.
Right. And I mean, I talk about this way too much, so apologies to anybody that's listened to more than one podcast, because I'm sure you've heard this before, but what's that theory called now? It's that core being is what protects you from your
Maslow's hierarchy.
No, the book's called The One with the Core, not Critical Enchantment Theory. That's Chloe Valderi's thing. What is it? Anyways, it's a theory that says, as humans evolved, we became aware of our own mortality. We had to, subconsciously box that away so that we didn't think about it. We build these armors, whatever that is. For thousands of years, the de facto one was religion, right? But it used to be, before it got called religion, it was just stories, right? And, Jordan Peterson would argue that all religion is just us telling stories about ourselves, right? Because all religions at the core are, the tenets of man, and
correct
of what we are. And we would just, tell stories, and they repeat it, and they get grandiose, right? And it was just us repeating stories about ourselves and about our own tendencies, and it's all kind of repeating. But that's what that is, right? But now, since we took religion away and kind of it lost its place, now all these other things are taking their place, right? Like that money thing, and like that power, whatever that is. And I think what the internet is bring people around to a new one, but it's happiness. right? And that is that core, right? And now power and money go into that because having power and money can make you happy, but it's in that way, right? Like if you hate your job, but it pays you $1 million a year, you're doing that balance of how much happiness can you buy with that $1 million?
Exactly.
What that does.
Exactly.
If you make, if you make $50,000 a year doing what you love, right? Podcasting, right? For me, if I'm just putting myself in a situation, right? If I can make 50 grand podcasting versus $1 million doing something I hated, I would take this overall because I don't need much, one, and two, I think I can build this into something, and that's best of both worlds. And that's what I believe is if you truly believe that and you lean into that and you find something that will make you happy, eventually your earnings will equal out to your capability level, right? If you're doing that, if you can find something.
Exactly. I think, here's a funny thing, Nick. We come back to these conversations and I really, really enjoy them. I'm a very, very strong believer, and maybe other people have different perspectives on this to me, but I think at the core, when you strip out every human being at the core, everyone is chasing the same thing, and that's internal peace.
Yeah.
That's it. Internal happiness, happiness about how they feel about themselves, and how they feel about others. Okay. And building an environment where they feel at their core, they're very happy. The difference is people believe there are different mediums to attain that. That's where the difference in path comes along. People believe that the path to obtain that final destination is different.
Right. And they don't see that destination too, because if you're on a different path, how can we end up at the same place?
Exactly. The place is the same. The place is the same. The place is internal happiness.
But do you think people understand that? Because that's what I'm saying. Because now,
no, I don't know. I don't think a lot of people inherently self-reflect enough,
right,
to understand exactly what it. That's where we talked about the concept of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about self-awareness because when you're self-aware, you are very, very in tune with what is it that brings you internal peacefulness, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Okay, like I told exactly what you talked about. You talked about someone could be miserable their whole life because they saw people that had accumulated more wealth than them. And someone could be miserable in their 60s because they saw someone less wealthier than them had traveled to all these different places and spent time with their families and actually have a functioning family. The problem is, if you don't take time to self-reflect about what it is that really makes you happy and what you want to say to yourself 40 years from now, you'll find that out 40 years from now. And it's a very tricky, regret is very difficult.
Yeah.
Regret is painful because you're not going to get this time again. And so that's really, really where it comes down to, is that every person you see around is chasing the same destination.
Right.
Everyone just takes a different path because that's what they believe. Now, the problem is in our social, this is where self-awareness is, I think, at this day and age, has become so much more important. We have so many extrinsic stimuli in our environment that are constantly flashy and golden, trying to capture our attention. And if we don't take a step back to critically analyze what's good and what isn't, we go towards the shiniest object.
Yeah.
Okay. We go towards the shiniest object, we follow it, we chase it, then we get it. And then we realize, wait, I'm not as happy as it looked in pictures and videos.
Yeah. Guilty. I've done that.
Okay. I'm not as happy as it was, the way it was pitched to me. By then it's too late.
Yeah.
By then it really is too late.
But is it? Because I went down that path.
Oh, right? Sorry. I mean, if you do it for a very prolonged period of time.
For sure.
For a very prolonged period of time.
And it's always too late. Whenever you realize it is too late before, but everything that's done up until then, only what matters is what's in front of you. Whatever happens is completely redundant.
Correct.
And just to kind of take it back, I'm not sure if this is kind of one of those chicken and the egg things, because I don't know which one comes first, but that understanding that whatever path everybody's on, that the destination is the same, that we're all trying to get. And some people, that destination, their path is taking them further from it, and you can see it, but that's what they're after. But that understanding, I think that's a huge piece and a huge boon to you is to understand just that fact of understanding that everybody's going to the same destination. That's what everybody's after. And that you trying to influence everybody else to get onto your path is completely useless. And you just got to stick on your path and
correct.
Everybody else understand that, hey,
correct.
I'm not trying to get to the same place. He's taking a different route. But the only thing that is going to happen to me by going off and trying to grab Saad off his path and pull him onto mine is now I'm not walking towards that destination. I'm getting off track.
Exactly. You're distracting yourself.
Exactly. And then I loved what you said about that stimuli, because I feel like that's so much. I think you rewind 500 years and that was still true, right? Like there was still so much stimuli, because when you're living in the forest, right, there's only a certain amount of stimuli. There's bird song, there's, creatures, there's a certain amount of awareness, there's a certain amount of stimuli, right? And then there's quiet at night. And then there's decompressing time. You sit with yourself, right? And then over these years, there's more things. Now there's traffic. Now there's, a village even just to take it and then traffic, and then, cities and all the stimuli, and then commercials and all these lights and these algorithms that are trying to keep you hooked onto it, social media, all these things. And it's just ramping and ramping and ramping, which is why you see such power in things like float tanks, which all they are is something that completely cuts off all that stimuli. You're floating in all this salt water, so it raises you right up. So no gravity isn't affecting you. There's no sound. There's no light. It takes away all that stimuli and really forces you to connect. You can get to that place through meditation. You can get to that place through just a million different ways, right? There's a lot of different ways to get to that place of self-awareness. But you're so right on the stimuli being a huge factor that limits people. When you get to that place of understanding the importance of that self-accountability and looking inside yourself, it's hard to look at people and be, how does everybody not realize this, right? But you can't blame them when everybody's just being bombarded by this stimuli.
Exactly, because everyone's in a bit of a rat race. At the end of the day, we're all social animals, okay?
Right.
And as a social animal, it's core to our biology that we are accepted and respected within our social circles.
Yeah.
Okay, so if your social circle is wealthy, Louis Vuitton bags, Jimmy Choo, I don't know, Gucci, Armani, whatever, that's what you're going to strive towards, because that's what brings you respect in your social circle.
Right.
But the problem, and here's where the self-awareness aspect comes in, is if that doesn't intrinsically make you happy, then the moment you accumulate that and gain the respect within that social environment, you're going to look back and realize, was it really worth it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then yes, go ahead.
And that self-accountability is the ability to look at it and say, because some people, fashion is their life and they love fashion, and that is that thing, and that is what makes them happy, right?
Correct.
That's an argument I meant to make way earlier when we got into it, and I kind of forgot the argument I was going to make. Is a really thing I struggled with this whole thing about was I always struggled with trading in general, because something about the fact of people being able to sit at home, just sit on their computer. They didn't make anything. They didn't bring anything to the world, and they can make money. I understand that there's a rule set, but something with me just doesn't sit right, that I could never do that, because that just is antithetical to what I believe value is and what true value is, right? But I don't want to say that people shouldn't do it, because there's some people, like I know lots of people that love the stock market is their podcast, right? This trading, this game. And I feel like for those people, how can I sit there on my high horse and say it's not a good thing when that is that thing that brings them happiness? So I'm very conflicted on this, right? And then when something like this happens and kind of blows that all up, where now this thing that I am very conflicted about, people have found this beautiful, beautiful way to take it, right? That Reddit thing that came out, that was beautiful to me, is that is the true essence of what it is, right? You're doing it for a stand. You're actually bringing something to the world. There's more than just the dollar. This is way more about the profits that they're making. It's about the message that they're sending, and they stand for something. And that's what got me excited, because it was like, I always thought that's what was lacking from the stock market. It's just people tossing it around. And when you put those things in play, and now all the incentives drive you to, right? Like pure capitalism, which the stock market is like almost a pure sense of what capitalism is always going to self-select for those people that are greedy and want to play that game and kind of get to that end. And with exceptions, right? Like you already mentioned that one hedge fund guy that has a bit of morality too, which is, a sight for sore eyes in that domain. But it's self-selecting for it. And that's why, like I said, I'm a very much free market guy. I think it'd be surprised, people would never guess me for even the tiniest bit socialist, but I have some real arguments against capitalism. I'm in the
100%. 100%. Same here. Yep.
There's so many places where I see very clearly, capitalism does not work there. This is the end result, and this will be the end result 10 times out of 10. You run this experiment a million times, it's always going to come down to this, because that's the core essence of what the incentive is trying to produce, right? Which is, I think, some of the stock market stuff. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, technically they're not doing anything illegal, but
that's where the morality aspect comes on. If your only KPI, exactly, if your only KPI is money,
mm-hmm.
then it's kind of like do whatever at the expense of maximizing it.
Right. But then the
isn't healthy for society either.
Right. But then the counter argument is, okay, well then how do you how do you incentivize morality into it? But you can't. It's like people, this is my big issue with people trying to teach wokeness. You can't teach wokeness. It's an experience. You have to feel bad. You have to hear someone's story. You have to feel with them. You have to have compassion, right? You can't read a book on somebody's experience. Well, I mean, a well-written book, that was a terrible example, but you can't be told, think this way. You won't understand it. It won't hit, right? And that's the same with morality. You can't just put things in place and hope that it spontaneously erupts. It's just not going to happen, right? So then, and that's me. I hate people that complain without solutions. And this is where I don't want to complain about this, because I don't see because I don't see a way, and if I mean, this is again my ego talking way out of its britches, but if I can't see a way to do it, that's where I take a step back, because I always say there's always a way, right? When people are saying like, oh, there's no way, like policing needs to be totally torn down, it can't be fixed, I'm like, fuck you, I could fix it, right? Like, oh, you can't do this, fuck you, I could fix that. But Wall Street, fuck, I don't know. I think that might be just fundamentally, it will turn to that.
There's no easy fix. There's no easy fix.
There is no easy fix, right?
There's no easy fix, because that's the way companies make money. Mm-hmm. Like when companies raise equity for the operations of their businesses. And
maybe not even an easy fix, right? Because I don't want to look for easy fixes. No, any fix that's worth anything is never going to be easy, but no fix at all. I don't see a fix, right? And that's the time where I try myself to not complain about things if I don't see it. If I can't see a solution, even if it's a crazy solution, right? Like with all this COVID stuff going on right now, people are saying like, oh, well, this is just how it has to be. And I'm saying, no, this isn't how it has to be. There's a bunch of different ways we could try it. And some of it's crazy and it would cost a lot of money, but it's options on the table. They're not easy solutions, but they're solutions, and nobody's trying, right?
Correct, yeah.
So I feel that I can complain about it, and I can, kick up a little fuss because I have something to say and I'm willing to. If you want to say, what would you do better? Fucking right. How much time you got? I'll tell you all the ways I do it better. Right? With something like this, I don't really got much to say to you. So it's like, I see it's not right, but it's almost out of my depth to fix it, and it's so out of my domain. And those are the times that it's exciting for something like this to come up where I can get excited over it, because the stock market is just kind of one of those things that I keep over here. I have my understanding of it and a little bit, but I don't get dive into it because I see it's almost inevitable where it's going to come. But then something like this happens that shakes the whole shit up, and this is new, and this is something nobody's seen, and nobody knows how it's going to come out, right? Like that's kind of how I want to end this, is to eventually ask you how you think this is going to shake out, what you think they're going to come in with regulation. But like, good question. Honestly, I think one that we've seen imminently is, so Citron Research produced a lot of research on opportunities to short equities in the market, and they released a statement, I believe it was today or yesterday, I think it was today in the morning, that they will no longer be releasing that ever. They've been doing that for the last 20 years. So they've been constantly producing just opportunities to short. So opportunities to short equities. They've been producing research. They're not going to allow it. No, they've been producing it for Wall Street and both public and institutional investors, of overvalued companies, which they believe should be shorted. Right. Which they believe there is an economic case to be made for those. Right. There's a market there. And today they made the decision of, we will not support people making money in that way anymore. That we don't believe money should necessarily be made on the, on the demise or the decimation of the particular stock of a company. Now, obviously, there are two sides to both coins. There is the side that sometimes shorting is healthy to prevent overvalued companies or fraudulent activities from prospering. But there's other ways to accomplish the same thing, right? Like a put or something. Exactly. There's lots of ways, right? Like there's lots of ways to accomplish that. Exactly like you mentioned. I'm just saying, this is what I've heard. This is what I've seen. A lot of people are like, well, no, shorting is important because
we need capital to flow efficiently to the right companies and all that jazz, whatnot. But again, like you mentioned, there are other ways to identify that,
right?
And just incentivizing people to make money by not investing in them.
And to me, what I would say to those guys is, okay, if you think that shorting has a place in the market and it's necessary, you need to show me that you can take out the power. Like you need to somehow figure out a way that you can't just say, let's take a company that there isn't an actual, like GameStop is one of those ones where it's kind of on the way out, right? More people are buying video games online. It is a actual company that probably would be right for shorting, right? But now you take a company like Amazon, too big to say, let's say Amazon 10 years ago, I don't know, wherever, when it was a big company, publicly traded, but not the giant one it is now, right? Maybe WestJet's a better idea. So now I'm a hedge fund guy. I got billions of dollars to send, and I don't like the fucking CEO of WestJet. He fucking stole my wife. Fuck that guy. I'm going to take a short position on them.
Exactly.
Which now sends this huge signal to the market. Hey, WestJet's not good. Fucking whole Warren Buffett just shorted WestJet. Fucking everybody get out, sell, get the fuck out of it.
Yep.
As long as that incentive is in play, shorts are compromised, right? It's not pure. It's not pure market. It's not capitalism like you say it is. It's fuckery, right? And as long as that is there, it's right to be played with. And as long as you let that in there, right? And that would be I love to hear that people are taking steps to bring shorting. Make shorting more difficult.
Honestly, or do nothing at all, and let the Reddit regulators regulate whoever wants. Like, if you want to short this market, go ahead. We'll make more money.
Right. Which is where you would hope, if this, if you had a magic table and you could force this position, you would love it for it not to be a stock like GameStop that was going down. If it was them, like, that would just add another layer onto this, and just another, a little more salt on your steak.
Shorting to a certain extent is okay. If you look at the database for other companies that have been shorted, like the top 100 companies or whatever, they vary from like 15% of their shares have been shorted to all the way up to 140%, which was GameStop.
Yeah.
That's what's not really, I don't think, is healthy, when you're shorting more shares than is actually available on the market.
Right.
When you're shorting that high of an interest, then it's like, okay, time to, like, if I buy, because I know if a share is shorted 140%, I know they have to buy that share. So if I now purchase 10 shares, they have to buy it off of me.
Right. Exactly.
Have to. There's no one else that can buy it off of me, because they're more unless GameStop issues more shares in the market. Unless the company itself issues more shares. So AMC did do that to raise capital. That's also what kind of tanked their price a little bit. But unless the company issues more shares in the market, have to buy that from you. So that's where it's like 140% shorted interest. Like, that's insane. Like, if we're going to capitalize on that, we're going to capitalize on that.
Oh, yeah. It's so interesting to see how that all shakes out, and the powers that play to stop it and to step in where they can, and not to push too hard, because I'm sure what they wanted to, I'm sure these hedge funds are saying, hey, we need this now, right behind closed doors, not as public as it got, but I'm sure way before we saw this public, that was happening behind closed doors, and they were crying for this, and like, holy shit, this is coming. And they could see what's coming, right? And it's just
what's going to be really interesting to see is that, so I told you, I really do believe in the power of the internet and the ability for something to explode. But one thing that I also know about the internet is that things don't stay hype for too long. So what I'm going to be carefully observing, which I think a lot of other people are, is how long do people hold for? Do they hold while they can make memes about it? Or do they actually hold to cause a significant denture? Because remember, like, even though Melvin Capital closed its position, more hedge funds shorted the stock. And it's still sitting at a comfortable 130% stock. But is social media going to continue that sustainable, that mobilization towards one concentrated effort into that one channel? I mean, it's only been about 4 days.
Right.
That's what's going to be interesting. Are they going to do it for another month?
And that's the thing. I feel like so much, and especially this conversation, because I think we just kind of passed over it. We never really discussed the other side of this. Is yes, the hedge fund guys are losing, but also if you were early on this rent thing and you bought these, stocks in GameStop and AMC early, and you made some good money on this, right? Like you are in a position, and now you are forced to not realize those gains and hold for moral reasons, right? Not like financially the way stock market, and that's their argument, right? The way stock markets should work, these people should be selling off, right? And if they were only invested in the money, that's why they would be. But that's what makes it.
This is what's really interesting. It's a game of psychology. It's now coming down to a game of psychology. What's really interesting, because I don't know what this experiment is called, but really, I think the experiment is you give one person money and you give a second person no money, and the second person chooses to give so the first person who has the money, you give them power to decide how much money you give the second person. Mm-hmm. And the second person has a choice to either accept that money or say no to it. And if they say no to it, then none of them have money. And what they found from that experiment was more people chose not to accept it, because they're like, screw you. How do you have more money, and how do you choose how much money I should get?
Yeah.
Rather than you choosing how much money I should get, I'm not going to give you money at all either. I'm going to use spite.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychologist, I forgot her name, she talked about the fact that this is exactly what we're seeing right now in the stock market. Mm-hmm. There are people out there that don't care about gains, that are out to spite, out for blood, basically.
Elon Musk, Portnoy, right? All these guys that have been mobilized and see all these things that we talked about for the last couple of hours of all that fuckery, and they see that, and and that burns them, and they feel that, and they want to make them pay. And I'm a love guy. I want that to be what we lead with, and I want that to be powerful. But fuck if I don't love this shit. Like I love.
It's amazing to watch.
Fight.
It is really funny to watch.
I love them taking it back to them, right? Because there was a time for love in 2008 when they should have realized, like, yes, we can't have the situation crumble, but we can't just put this 100% on the backs of these poor people, right? There was a time for compassion there, and it missed it, right? Now, this is a completely different ballgame because it's not the entire society relying on it, but it's a very similar situation, and there's way more eyeballs on it, and I'm so curious to see if that compassion comes, where it comes from, right? Because, and how. I don't think to me, I don't see a space.
There's no right answer right now, and honestly, there's no rule book that has not happened before.
Yeah.
Strap in. That's all I can say. Strap in, enjoy the ride, and I hope they make a Netflix documentary on this soon.
Oh, I'm sure they will. The bigger short. That's what they're gonna have to call it.
They will. The bigger short, exactly.
Oh,
the big squeeze.
So many people have asked me in the last couple of days, have you ever watched The Big Short? And I'm like, I've watched that movie like 10 times. That was one of my favorite movies.
I haven't watched it actually. I'm probably gonna watch it soon.
Oh,
no,
man,
I've never watched it. I'm gonna watch it tonight.
You gotta watch it.
I'll watch it tonight.
It's such a good movie.
I'll watch it tonight.
Oh man,
I'll watch it tonight.
All right, anybody?
I think it was trending on Netflix the other day.
It's gotta be. Well, and that's the thing, and it explains so much of this. It's definitely a different scenario, but shorting the market, all this knowledge. If you have seen The Big Short before and maybe didn't get it as much, and they do a really good job of explaining it, but if you listen to a podcast like this or listen to Portnoy talk about it, listen to that, and then go back and watch that movie now with this little bit of understanding, you will love that movie so much more, and it'll be so much more impactful to you. And just when you watch it, realize that this happened. This was real people's life. This was 2008, well, 2006, 2008, whatever, in the time of build up. And these were real people that went through this and had these moral dilemmas, because in that movie, about these guys that realize, so we talk about shorting the market, right? These people that are shorting these stocks that they know. In The Big Short, it was these people that realized that all these banks have all these subprime mortgages out, and all these people that have this there's a housing bubble, and it's going to crash, and the value of the housing market itself is going to go down. But nobody's ever shorted a housing market because houses never lose value, right? Like there's going to be dips in economy, but overall it's always going to be trending up. So they realized, like, hey, there's some money to be made by shorting the housing market, which everybody looked at like, are you fucking crazy? You're going to short the housing market? Like, come on. They said, yeah, no, let's do it. And they said, well, there's nothing to do it. And they said, well, build us a way. We want to short this market. This is capitalism. Make it happen. And they figured it out. And then there was people that started to see that and started to get wise to it. And they doubled down. They tried to pressure them out of it. But then they're left with this decision of, yeah, we stand to make a lot of money. But they saw off the backs of this entire economy is going to collapse. And they say, like,
yeah,
do we tell people, like, how do you feel good? I just made a killing in the market, made all this money, but now all these people are poor, people are killing themselves, like, and they go through, and when you watch it, they go through that dilemma. So I kind of ruined it for everybody, but I mean, it's history, it happened, right? And these are the people that were in those positions and had to go through those moral dilemmas. We talk about, the moral dilemmas of how do you regulate this stuff. People have a little bit of money in it to try and spite these big guys, but that was, people's lives at stake in that situation. Very similar to this. And to me, the right decision wasn't made in that instance, and people were hurt. And now they have an opportunity for a very similar one to run it back, and we'll see how much has changed. I'm so curious to see what comes of this. I just
honestly, same here. I don't know what the right decision right now is going to be, but it's literally just going to be waiting, watching what happens.
Do you? Because I don't. So fair play if you don't. Do you kind of have any sense of what the options are of, like, what the certain routes? Like, in my head, I would guess that SEC could come in and just. Yeah, but like I said earlier, I don't even know how you do that.
What can they say? I honestly don't know. I don't think they have much of a ground to stand on. What can they say? The only thing they can limit is how much buying and selling is going on, but they can't limit one particular venture over the other.
The only thing I can think of is capping how much of a stock you can short, or like putting a max on how much of a stock can be shorted, like a 50% max or something.
Exactly. I think that's what could happen. Exactly. Right. I think that's a bit healthier.
Right. That's kind of a middle ground between some of the things you hear banded about, but even that, like, trying to roll that out is a huge, huge thing. Like, think about the thousands of companies that have short positions, the thousands of different investors that have short positions to regulate that all and to bring it in. And what is it? Just you have a date, and now everybody that has to, or you force people to, you can't take any more short positions in that until this date till you get down to 50% maybe. I don't know. I think we could sit here all night trying to do it. And the funny thing is,
we can try to figure it out.
There's probably people in rooms all over the world right now at 7:00 on this Friday that are thinking the exact same thing. What are we going to do here? Like, what? That's the thing. There is no right answer here. And usually there is a right answer. There's not a right answer, but there's the answer. There's the institute.
The best solution forward. The middle ground forward.
It's not even the middle ground forward in my sense. It's what is going to keep the status quo. What's going to keep all these people that are in power in power, right? What is going to benefit them? That's what happened in 2008. It was decided that these people, we're not going to let all these big institutions fall. We're going to prop them up. We're going to inflate, right? Quantitative easing, bailouts, all this stuff. And in this situation, there's way too many eyes on it, right? Like, so if this wasn't so wide open, if this was kind of one of those things that usually happens in the shadows and kind of a couple people know about it, right? The people that were on Reddit, and it didn't get all this publicity, I would just assume, they'll just say, fuck you little investors, this shorting it. Okay, now only big firms can short, and if there's shorter positions, you guys can't take advantage of it, and would just fuck the little guy. That's what they want to do. That is exactly what they want to do. The only thing preventing them from doing that is all this publicity. The people like me and you talking about it right now saying, hey, fuckers, we're watching. Don't you dare do this again. Like, we got our eyes on you. It's so much fun when you understand it. And I'm just enjoying the ride, and I think you are too. And I
think we all are, my man.
I had one more question for you. I know I said that was going to be the last question, but I just remembered one more I wanted to ask you.
What's up?
So through this whole thing, you've been kind of, you've been watching it. You were lucky enough, not lucky, you were smart enough to recognize the signs and realize, hey, this is a bigger deal than it was early. And you started talking about it. And I love that. That is awesome to me, to see people that it wasn't that you wanted everyone to get rich. You wanted everyone to see, hey, there's a movement going on, and this is important, and it has value, and it has, morality to it. But to me, I was putting myself in your shoes. If I would be worried just because of the complexity around this and how much understanding, did you worry that people were going to get in on this at your behest and then have, the SEC come in and completely fuck the look at, like we've seen, and is not off the table to happen.
And that's totally fine. I think that's if you saw all of my posts on a consistent basis.
You were very.
I constantly said, if you're going to get involved, you might as well set this on fire.
Yeah, be willing to risk it, right? And
be willing to set this on fire.
And I kind of knew that, and I knew that'd be your answer. I just wanted to kind of show your position, because I thought that was admirable how you went about that. You didn't. I think you very easily could have said, like, hey, this is risk-free, everybody get in, because that would help your position, right?
Not at all.
And you had that morality to say, hey, don't get into this. If you're only in it to make money, this probably isn't for you. If you understand it and you realize what's behind it, and you also see that there is money to be made at that, and you want to believe in it, get behind it, but be willing to lose it, because they could come in and completely fuck us, right? Like, we are in the right.
Oh, exactly, 100%.
Happen, but it could happen. And I loved how you went about that, was to be loud, be vocal, and show people, but also with measured responses, and when people went to you, you told them, laid it out very clear. Me too, right? I asked you about it and you laid it out.
It's important. It's very, very important. It's really, really important to protect the interests of, okay, yes, there's a particular cause you're striving towards,
right.
But what's also very, very important is no one should strive towards a cause. Well, here's the debate. It's debatable, but if you're trying to get someone to strive towards a cause, make sure you've done very well at communicating the pros and cons,
right,
and what risks they take. You can't make a decision for another person, but you have to be very ethical in disclosing what risks they are incurring.
Especially when you're incentivized not to, which in this situation you're not, because the more people that bet against these shorts and inflate these stocks, the more power you have, the more money you make, right? So technically, that's why I loved it, because you were incentivized not to. You were incentivized to say, hey, this is great. You're going to make money, no risk, right? That is what the incentives were telling you to do, but that wasn't what was right. And that's not what.
That's not my morality, right?
Exactly.
That's where it comes down to. If it was money, then yeah, I'd probably do the opposite.
So then kind of where that led me to in my thinking was, I wasn't on those Reddit boards and I didn't get to see that. I wonder, and it seems like from everybody that is smart, that has gone in there, that I trust at least a little bit to tell me what the vibe was in that Reddit board that was discussing all this stuff. I hope that it had that morality of letting all these people know that they weren't getting people. And I imagine if you're looking at trading Reddit, it's like you're going to have at least a little bit of knowledge, but I hope that morality was through on all this, because I worry that there's people that get caught up in the hype and jump into this not understanding what they're getting into. And there's so much, just like there's these bad incentives that, turn the stock market to what we talk about, all the bad things happens on the good guys side too. The just bad incentives. It's all about how much morality you have to stand up to that, because it's tempting, right? And
no, that's very important. I think one thing that I will caution a lot of people, especially anyone that watches this afterwards, is understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of speculation about short squeezes, gamma squeezes, when it may come, when it won't come. If you're getting that information, find out where you're getting that information from and why you're getting that information.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very important.
Yeah.
That's why I told you that I speculated that the short squeeze for certain hedge funds came in about yesterday. But I don't know when the next, when these next options will close or when their expiry dates are.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that is the information you are inherently looking for, make sure you get that information before you get some skin in the game.
Yeah, for sure. And
a very important thing as well, right? While people are hyping this up, also know the fact that social media, as quickly as something becomes viral, it's also as quickly as it goes down and it moves away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure it does.
Okay, so how much of this is meme worthy versus how much of this is actually sustainable? That is your risk to incur.
For sure. And you got to make that judgment. That's kind of the judgment call that everybody's making, right? At the end of the day, of what it comes down to of success, you need to understand everything around it, but that's the judgment call you're making right there. And that's what's important for people to understand. And I got a couple of thank yous to give to you, Saad, before we sign off. First off,
no problem, man.
Thanks for that first episode we did. That was not only so much fun for me and I learned so much, but I think I got a lot of response from it, and people really learned a lot from that episode. So thank you for all that you gave me there. And then
not a problem, man.
Secondly, thanks for helping me with getting into Bitcoin before all this, because
your Bitcoin must be rising right now.
You know what? It's funny.
Where's it at right now?
I was listening to Antonopoulos or whatever on Joe Rogan in like 2015 or whatever it was, and I was telling everyone to buy Bitcoin, but I'm too lazy. I'm a lazy prick at my real core, and I knew it was a good investment, but it wasn't the time investment to me go figure it out and get a coin wallet and all that stuff just wasn't worth it to me at that time, and I didn't do it. But I told other people to do it, right? And I was said like, oh, now great investment. I've looked into it. I think it's really solid, and I think it's going to be the future, right? And more so than that is blockchain technology, not even coins. I think coins is almost the least of what blockchain is going to bring, right? I think some stuff like Signal and apps that are using blockchain to solve other problems is more going to be what it is. But what I loved, and me and you talked a little bit through a text about this, but what this signals to I think this is going to be the logical fallout of this is whatever way they come in with whatever regulation, the amount of fuckery that has been seen already destroyed
going to destroy so much confidence in centralized finance systems.
Exactly. So something like Bitcoin that they physically cannot fuck with. That is what it's designed, is to prevent shit like this, which is why they put it in, and why money was such an easy place, was because it can be fucked with like that. And I think it's going to be people waking up to, holy shit, it might not be Bitcoin. Yep. It might not be.
So when we talked about the start, how your financial institutions are the foundations of your two towers.
Yeah.
Well, now you have fintech along with decentralized finance as an emerging second foundation upon which your next towers potentially may be built.
Yeah.
How long that takes, that's speculation, but you can see that emerging in the horizon. And
you can see the cranes going up,
that
you can see the fencing going around it. Yeah.
Yep.
But only
that's where I think the future is going to be.
And I think guys like me and you see that, base being built and seeing where it's going to go. But I think there's still millions and billions of people that don't see it, right? And I think that's where, if there's money to be made, right, on the stock market, how do you make money? You see something that other people don't.
Yeah, exactly. That's why. That's exactly where I say Ethereum. So I would put money into Ethereum than I would in Bitcoin, and there's a reason for that. So Ethereum, I believe, allows people to build decentralized systems, not just coins or currency to be exchanged as well.
Right.
Whereas Bitcoin wasn't designed for that. So I have, again, this is my personal investment advice. It could be wrong. It could be right. I think Ethereum has more potential for growth than Bitcoin right now.
Right.
Bitcoin right now is growing on hype versus Ethereum strikes me. I'm going to sum this up real quick. The really simplest way to look at it is, if you have a commodity, say for example, a dollar note, okay, you can only use that as an exchange of currency. But now if you have a gold coin, you can use that both as an exchange of currency, but you can also form electrical wires out of it to use in a system.
Yeah.
So now gold becomes both a commodity and a currency. Versus the dollar note you had, that's only a currency.
Yeah.
That's the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is your only currency that's built for transactions. Ethereum is built for transactions, and if you want to use as a commodity in a larger system.
And just to cover my own ass, because I've made that exact statement to people and recommended Ethereum over Bitcoin. So I feel like people are going to be mad at me if I don't explain my position of why I went Bitcoin, because I've made that same argument for Ethereum over Bitcoin before. But my thought, the reason I went Bitcoin over Ethereum was, the way I see it is, to me, it's blockchain. That's what I'm investing. I think the blockchain technology, and like we say, coins are one area to do it, but I think it's the technology. And I think people don't understand all that's coming and all the technology that are going to come with blockchain and what it's going to build. And I think when people start to see, like, holy man, this is revolutionizing industry after industry, where this blockchain, when they hear blockchain, they're going to see the results and their mind is going to go to what they know about it. Blockchain to 99% of the world, blockchain means Bitcoin to people. That's what I'm investing on.
That's true. That's true. That makes sense. Exactly. Market sentiment. Market sentiment is a really big thing. Yeah. If I've made money, the most money that I've made on the stock market has not been fundamentals.
No,
it's been people's psychology.
Yeah, for sure. For sure it is. And
I'm going to be very frank about that. I've made a good amount of money on the stock exchange. In fact, my most underperforming stocks right now are fundamentally strong companies.
That's funny.
I'm sitting at a $4,000 loss on Air Canada right now.
Fuck Air Canada. I hate every fiber in my being.
But I've made double that, to say the very least, on meme stocks.
Right, exactly. Fuck, it's crazy, hey?
So it's, that's all I can say at this point in time.
But I think everybody I know that does well in the stock market all says that. It's not about the fundamentals. It's about understanding of seeing something that other people don't.
It's like poker.
It's just like poker.
Playing poker.
Exactly
playing
what it
poker.
is.
At this point in time, it's playing poker.
But I think it takes so long and people have to take so many losses to realize that, where they get in, they do everything right, they follow the fundamentals, and they get fucking killed, right? And that's what that Taibbi article on Robinhood was talking about. They said, how much blood has to be spilled before you make those lessons and you learn those lessons? And that's why there was institutional factions. If you wanted to get into that, they'd let you, build your way up and make those mistakes along the way to build your understanding, right? That neural network in your own mind of what goes with what and what factors impact other ones. And it gives you that second or that sixth sense, that intuition of what's going to happen. And that is way more important than any fundamental or any hot tip you can get. It's about building that in yourself.
That's
and
true.
If you're not willing, that's why I don't like about these apps of, I don't like, it's just like fighting. You know, they say MMA fighters, as soon as they start talking about retirement, as soon as they got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, that's his moment. They stop winning, it all goes out the window. You have to be all in.
Yeah.
All in. I feel like with investing, you have to be maybe not all in, but you have to be a very good
balance your risks. Balance your risks.
If
very important to balance your risks.
If you're just flitting around and you're just, you know, dabbling, you're in for trouble. I think if you're just going to dabble, give it to someone that knows what you're going to do. If you're going to actually think about it and build that up and be willing to lose and build and willing to learn along the way, do it yourself. If you don't fucking know, talk to someone.
I think, yeah, that's true. And I think I'll summarize. I think the last piece of thing I'll leave all your followers and viewers with are the 3 stocks that I think are some of my personal highest growth stocks,
Perfect.
which I still think are going to go further up. That's Orbital Energy Group.
Orbital Energy Group, okay.
Ticker symbol OEG on the NASDAQ. Okay. Palantir Technologies, PLTR.
PLTR, okay. Palantir, gotcha.
And FIBO TV.
FIBO TV.
FIBO TV. FIBO TV is basically the Netflix of the sports entertainment world.
Oh, interesting.
So they've signed some really, really interesting deals with a lot of sports streaming rights and stuff. But I'll let you guys view it and learn up all the fundamentals and stuff. But those are 3 companies. Orbital Energy Group doubled in the last 2 weeks.
Whoa, really?
Itself, yeah, $4 to $9. And I think by the end of the year, it'll go up to about $25 to $30.
Holy shit.
Palantir went from, I believe, $8 to about $39 in the last 2 months itself.
Holy shit.
But these are some high growth companies, and they haven't matured yet.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening here and you got a little bit of money, just like we said with everything, don't
search your fundamentals up. Yeah, search your fundamentals. Exactly.
Fundamentals. And if you want stock, and if you want my number 1 stock to invest in, it's VonDubCast Industries. I mean, it's just a little stock right now.
Is it coming up? I put money into it.
Yeah, it's on the NASDAQ right now, so you guys can all go dump.
I'm gonna short that stock.
I'll get Reddit after. We'll squeeze the fuck out. Oh fuck! Well, that's amazing, man. I think that's a great way to end their Saad.
Thanks so much, Sarah. It was a pleasure. It's a pleasure talking to you, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I look forward to our next conversation.
Yes, sir. We'll have to do it in person next time.
Take care. Have a good one, Nick.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody. How'd you like that one? It was tons of fun to record. Hope you guys got something out of it. Definitely, like we said, this is not either of our area of expertise by any means. We may have been looking into it and doing our own research and kind of diving in from the edges, but it's not something we swim in the deep end of. So don't take anything strictly to heart. This all should be taken with a big old spoonful of salt there. So but other than that, I had lots of fun, really loving this podcast so far, loving all the episodes coming out. Like I mentioned in the intro, come comment on some stuff. I mean, you can comment anywhere. I'll reply to anything anywhere. And if you have something to say and you want to discuss it, I'm down to do that. Like I say, I'm putting myself out here on this podcast. So I'm already out there. It's no risk for me. So if people are, brave enough to bring their thoughts out on a social media forum, I just figured Facebook, the VonDubCast Facebook page is just kind of somewhere where everybody can have access to, but it's not as public. If people aren't watching it, they're not going to see it. And if they aren't listening to this, they won't get kind of the conversations. It kind of keeps it a little bit privater. So it's not as big of a stage, and we can kind of make it somewhere special. But, like I said, we can do that anywhere. But I just think that's kind of a next step in the evolution to build a community around this podcast, is to start getting some conversations going. So if you like what you heard, come on by there and let's have a conversation, or DM me, like I said, or comment anywhere. I just think that'd be somewhere I'd like to localize it until I find a better spot for it to happen. So yeah, other than that, if you liked it, tell a friend, follow the social medias, all that jazz I say every fucking week. You guys know the drill. Thank you guys. You guys make this all possible. I fucking love you guys. You're great. This is so much fun. I don't know. I'm repeating myself. I've had too much tea today, too much coffee, too much fun. You know how it is. One of those. Peace out, motherfuckers. Bye. 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 Motherfuckers.